Welcome back to another episode of Opal Wave MTG, a channel dedicated to exploring power levels in EDH. This video deck tech series is going to be on Evelyn the Covetous, which is a 5-mana Grixis vampire rogue, Grixis being red, black, and blue. It has flash. Whenever Evelyn the Covetous or another vampire enters the battlefield under your control, exile the top card of each player's library with a collection counter on it. Once each turn, you may play a card from exile with a collection counter on it if it was exiled by an ability you controlled, and you may spend mana as though it were any color to cast it. So instead of the Markov deck tech where we're kind of really trying to get into the red zone, Evelyn is going to be providing a ton of card advantage, so we can still try to get into the red zone, but at the same time we'll be able to recover from board wipes really well. This video series was recommended by Manuel Pena, so thank you so much for the deck tech recommendation. If you want to see your favorite commander brewed across the power level spectrum, be sure to let me know in the comments below. Also, leave a like and go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you haven't subscribed yet, but you still are watching my content, I really do appreciate that. And if there's anything I can do to earn your subscription, be sure to let me know in the comments below as well. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. So for the Skirmish tier of Evelyn, Evelyn actually can generate a ton of card advantage on her own. So in order to manage that power level, we want to make sure that we're not turboing out a lot of vampires out, and we're not like doubling up on the ETBs or anything like that. So we've got ourselves some really nice vampires here for the Skirmish tier. Some fun stuff like Adaptive Automaton, which gives our other creatures +1/+1. Stormkirk Captain can also give our stuff +1/+1. Thirsting Bloodlord. A lot of these anthem type of creatures that'll let us get into the red zone a little bit more effectively. And then as far as combat goes, we do have a few more finisher type cards with stuff like Sanctum Seeker, where we can make our opponents lose life when we attack them. Drana, Liberator of Malakir, is going to be really great since she'll put counters on all of our stuff. Since she has that first strike, she'll deal the damage first. She'll get that trigger, put a counter on each other attacking creature you control, and then those creatures will deal damage. So a really great card, Vampire, for getting in the red zone. A few other cards like Necropolis Regent is going to be really great for finishing games, since it's just going to put a massive amount of counters on your creatures when you deal combat damage. And then Blood Tyrant is also going to be a really fun one, since during your upkeep, each player will lose life, and you get a counter on it for each life lost this wave. So as long as you have 3 opponents, it's going to go to 8, and then 11, 14. And whenever a player loses the game, you get 5 counters on the Blood Tyrant. So this thing can get really big, really fast, start ending games really quickly. So a super sweet card there. We've got a little bit of removal in our vampires too. Stuff like Falconwrath Exterminator, which can deal damage equal to the +1 counters on it. And since we do have the synergies with stuff like the Drana and the Necropolis Regent, it's going to be some really nice synergy there. And then we've got Markov Enforcer, another way for us to remove our opponent's creatures, since when it or another vampire enters it, the Markov Enforcer will fight another target creature an opponent controls. And then whenever those creatures die that it fought, you get to make a blood token. So some nice extra way to kind of sift through the cards in your deck with this guy. I've also got this Falconwrath Marauders. This is one of my favorite vampires. I started playing Magic back when the original Innistrad was released, so I played this card in a deck for a while. It was really fun. It gets out of hand pretty quickly, since it starts off as a 2/2, but it gets +2 counters on it whenever it deals damage. So when you add stuff like Drana and the Necropolis Regent, this thing can get really big really fast. Pretty fun win condition there. And then for a little bit of extra utility, we've got Olivia's Bloodsworn, which can give all of our other vampires haste. Really great card in that regard. And then we've got this other sweet card called Timothar, Baron of Bats. And so essentially when a vampire you control dies, you can pay 1 and exile that vampire, and then you make a bat. And when that bat deals damage to an opponent, you get to get that vampire back. So some really great way to stop board wipes, essentially. But also it's going to give us a little bit of extra value with our Evelyn, since when the bat deals damage, you get to put that vampire back in the battlefield, and you're going to trigger your Evelyn again. Some really nice synergy. Moving on to our sorceries, You know me at this point. If we're in red, I'm probably going to be throwing in a Blasphemous Act. It's just a super sweet board wipe. Really easy to use. You know, so even though we are a creature deck, you can't always assume that you're going to be ahead on the creature count. So, you know, at least I like to run at least one board wipe in most of my decks. And then we've got two other board wipes that aren't really destroying creatures, but they are bouncing back the permanents to our hand. And that's because with Evelyn, since she really likes ETBs, vampires be entering the battlefield, we get a lot of bonus out of bouncing everything back to our hand. So you move to combat, you swing at everyone, and then in your second main phase, you can use the Coastal Breach and the Flood of Tears to return all of the vampires back to your hand, and then from there you can replay your Evelyn, start getting all those extra values out of your vampires entering the battlefield again. Flood of Tears especially is good because if you return 4 more non-token permanents to your hand this way, you can put the Evelyn back onto the battlefield, and then you don't even need to spend 5 mana to recast it. So a really nice card. Both of these board wipes are going to be really great in the context of this deck. And then a Pact of Serpent, so we can get a little bit of extra card draw. Since in case we don't have Evelyn, we won't be able to cast the cards we've exiled with her. So having a way for us to gain some card advantage that's not our commander is going to be pretty nice. Moving on to our instance, a lot of removal. Not doing anything too crazy here. Just some nice middle of the road type of removal. Bedevil's going to be really great, destroying artifacts, creatures, or planeswalkers. Chaos Warp for a hit anything kind of a spell. Cancel and negate so we can protect our board a little bit. And then some extra removal stuff like Hero's Downfall. Tragic Slip is really great for getting around those pesky indestructible creatures. And then we've got this Prismari command, which has a lot of different modes that we can use. I can filter some cards, make a treasure token, destroy an artifact. A lot of really great stuff on this card. Moving on to our artifacts. Nothing too crazy here, just some pretty straightforward 2 and 3 cost ramp. We've also got this Obelisk of Erd, which we can use our vampires to evoke if we really need to. Gives all of our vampires +2/+2. And then this heraldic banner, it's going to give, you choose a color, and then creatures you choose of the chosen color get +1/+0. And a lot of our creatures are black primarily. So black will probably be the color that you end up choosing for the heraldic banner. Just an extra mana rock that can also let us hit a little bit harder in the red zone. And then we've also got this Icon of Ancestry. Gives creatures of the chosen type +1/+1, so not bad. And then we can use it to generate a little bit of card advantage by looking at the top 3, and you can put a creature you reveal from the top 3 into your hand. So not a bad card. Moving on to our enchantments, Imprison the Moon, a little bit of extra removal. Call of the Bloodline is going to be super cool in this deck, since we can discard a card and make a 1/1 Vampire Knight with lifelink. And you can only activate it once a turn, but you can do it once on everyone's end steps. And that way you'll be triggering Evelyn. So you'll be discarding 1 card to exile 4 cards. So for 1 card, generating 4 cards. That's some really good value with Call of the Bloodline. Eventually, unfortunately, you will run out of cards, but it'll still be worth once you get that engine going online. It's going to be pretty sweet. Molten Echoes, while we do want to be careful we're not doing too much of the crazy value to make sure we're keeping the power level low, we do want to make sure that we can, we still want to be able to apply pressure, you know what I'm saying? So we've added a Molten Echoes where we can double up on our vampires entering the battlefield. And we've also got a Shared Animosity where we can, basically when we swing, our vampires are going to get really big because they're going to get +1/+1 for each other vampire you control. And moving on to our lands, pretty straightforward. We've got a lot of dual lands that most of them are going to be entering the battlefield tapped. Since we are in that skirmish tier, it's not a really big issue, since we're kind of just chilling, not really trying to put too much pressure on the board. Bojuka Bog's gonna be really nice for dealing with our opponent's graveyard, since we don't have a ton of graveyard interaction. You could probably add like an instant or something, maybe an artifact that can deal with graveyards if you really needed an extra piece of graveyard interaction. And we've got this Voldaren Estate, which can let us make some extra blood tokens, where the ability costs 1 less for each vampire you control, so a little bit of extra value in the Voldaren Estate there. Thanks for checking out this episode of Opalwave MTG. Again, I'm your host Jacob, and be sure to check out the battle version of Evelyn that is coming out in the next couple of days. Until next time.